Jó napot kívánok, hölgyeim és uraim! Akkor elkezdjük ezt a mai rendezvényt. Én most az elején mondanék pár gyors szót magyarul, aztán átváltunk angolra. Éppen ezért szeretném mondani, hogy akik az első amúgy angol nyelven megrendezett szekciót szeretnék magyar szinkrontolmáccsal hallgatni, ők itt tudnak tolmácskészüléket szerezni, és az egyes csatornán tudják magyarul hallgatni a rendezvényt. És egyébként a rendezvény második fele magyar nyelven fog zajlani, úgyhogy majd akkor is adunk információkat a szinkron tolmácsolásról. So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Andrea Virag. I am Director of Strategy at Republikon Institute. And on behalf of Republikon Institute, I would like to welcome you to today's event called Euroscepticism in the Shadow of Putin, organized by the European Liberal Forum and Republikon Institute. Today, at this event, we wish to discuss how Euroscepticism has changed during the past few months due to the war in Ukraine, and also with our international and Hungarian experts, we wish to discuss how liberal pro-European forces can fight Eurosceptic movements, Eurosceptic forces, and how to go forward. The first panel will be an international panel held in English, and the second panel will be in Hungarian. I would like to thank the European Liberal Forum for their support, also thank our speakers for accepting our invitation and being here, and also thank you all for spending a few hours with us and listening to these conversations. Right now, I would like to give the floor to Evan, who will welcome you on behalf of the European Liberal Forum and tell you a bit about the European Liberal.
Thanks. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to this event on the Euroscepticism in the Shadow of Putin. So my name is Evan. I'm project officer for the European Liberal Forum. If you don't know us, we are the political foundation and think tank of the European Liberal Party, the ALDE party. And as such, we provide support, content, and we do research for members of the European Parliament. We also have 47 members organization across Europe, including Republikon, who is hosting this event today in Budapest. So yes, it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to this event that has a lot to address indeed. This conference will dive into this phenomenon of Euroscepticism and how it may have evolved in the last couple of months. Back in 2021, when this project was designed, the idea was to look into Euroscepticism for Hungary and Poland and how both countries challenge the rule of law and the EU legal order and the rule of law conditionality mechanism across Europe. But let's say that the most recent development in Europe may have shifted a bit that event. So indeed, the ongoing war and invasion of Ukraine by Russia needs and will be addressed during this event, as it is fueled by counter-narrative of the EU project that sometimes found their roots further east. So throughout this event and throughout the year, ELF and Republikon will provide a liberal framework to counter and challenge this narrative and what can and should be the way for pro-European future less inclined and tempted by Euroscepticism. So once again, thank you for all coming today and take part in today's discussion. And without further ado, I will give the floor to Dr. Milos Ordun, who is ELF board member and international advisor for Nowoczesna and international officer at Project Polska. So for his welcoming remark, I wish you all a nice event.
Welcome on behalf of the European Liberal Forum, on behalf of the Board of Directors of the European Liberal Forum. I'm really glad that I can be here today with you online at this very important event on Euroscepticism. And this topic is really important for us in ELF, as we are working a lot in the topic of populism, on Euroscepticism and how to combat them all over Europe. This is one of the reasons why European Liberal Forum exists, and it's very important to stress that we are an organization that works very closely with its 47 members all over Europe, implementing projects on, among others, among populism, about the future of Europe. And for me personally, the topic of Euroscepticism and populism is very close to my heart, as I come from Poland. I live in Warsaw, and I can see every day how Euroscepticism, how populism are destroying the state institutions, are destroying relations of our country with our partners in the European Union and beyond, and how they are influencing also other spheres of life of the Polish society. So Polish Euroscepticism is, I think, a very standardized Euroscepticism in our part of Europe, and something that, talking to you, colleagues in Budapest, something that I believe you can relate to. So it is very much connected with reducing the European Union, with reducing the integration to one single issue, to money. So populists, illiberal powers in Europe, definitely in Poland, they just reduce European Union to money. And for them, the European Union this is not about values. This is not about security and safety. This is definitely not about liberal democracy and human rights. It's all about money. And frankly speaking, this is not only the illiberal regime that is doing it in Poland. For many, many years, all previous governments since Poland entered the European Union were actually talking about the European Union as a source of funds. They were not much about values. They were not much about the democracy. They made Polish people associate the European Union purely with money. And for many reasons, this happened. I think it was a huge mistake. But right now, this government can really capitalize on it, because for many years, Polish people saw the European Union as a bank, as an ATM, and right now the illiberal powers can present it exactly like that. They talk about the EU as a source of funds, and I find it extremely dangerous also for the future, because we will be getting less and less funds from the European budget, and we have more and more obligations also financially towards the European Union. And if you have another generation of Polish people who are raised in this atmosphere of reducing the European project only to the financial project, it will be really easy to diminish it. It will be really easy to say, okay, if there is no more money for us in this project, why are we still here? And we can really see it in the last year's and this year's discussion about the Next Generation EU, about the Resilience and Reconstruction Fund, when the Polish government was saying, we don't really need the European Union so much. We can actually borrow the money cheaper in the market, which is not true, by the way. But basically, this is what they are saying. And also, they are also using this Eurosceptical rhetorics right now during the terrible, terrible war in Ukraine. So right now we can see that this is also a part of the strategy of the Polish government to diminish the role of the European Union, to criticize the European Union and its authorities on the European level. Many things they do, especially rhetorically, for the Polish audience, but also in international relations, when they talk about the war in Ukraine and the support for Ukrainian people in Ukraine, but also for refugees, is actually aims at criticism towards the EU. So they are not really producing messages to be supportive for the Ukrainian people, but they are doing it also to attack the European Union for not doing enough. And this is a deliberately chosen strategy, and we will see also more and more consequences in the future. Because let me stress once again, this government is Eurosceptic. We're having a Eurosceptic government in a very pro-European country, so they cannot attack the EU very directly. They cannot say that the EU is bad and we should have Paul enter the EU, but they are attacking it slowly, smartly, using some nuances. But I'm just really afraid that because while they are doing it, they are using all the budget of the state they have, all the state apparatus, all the state institutions, including public TV. So this message is being repeated so many times that one day the support for the European integration, even in Poland, will be lower than now. And right now, it's the highest among all European states or societies. Also, one last thing I would like to stress here is the role of education and the system of education. The Law and Justice government took over the system of education, and they are also using this to create more Eurosceptics in the Polish society. They are changing the curriculum. There is more and more about patriotic Polish education, about teaching about how special Poland is. And there is not much, or almost not at all, about the European integration, about the importance of the integration, and about the importance of peace in the system. And they are doing it to raise, to educate a new generation of their Eurosceptic voters, so that the future generation is even more Eurosceptical than they are, and so that the new generation will be interested in supporting their anti-EU agenda. And I think for us as liberals, this is the key thing, to talk about the European Union as something more than money, is to talk about the values, is to talk about the rule of law, about open democracy, about human rights, because this is what European Union is really about. And this is how liberal forces envision the European Union, and how we are still building the European Union. So I hope this will be part of your discussions there in Budapest. And thank you very much, Republikon Institute, one of our key partners, one of our most important and most active members in the region for hosting this event. I wish you a fruitful discussion, and I'm really looking forward to read the conclusions of this debate. Thank you very much. Welcome on behalf of the European Liberal Forum, on behalf of the Board of Directors of the European Liberal Forum.
So thank you very much. We are going to continue with our first panel, with the international panel. I'm Daniel Mikec, senior researcher of Republikon Institute, and I'd like to introduce our panelists. Daria Hejvos-Gromkowska is a professor at the Adam Mickiewicz University in Poznan. Andrea Virag is the director of strategy at the Republikon Institute. Renata Gravina is a researcher of contemporary history at La Sapienza University in Rome. And last but not least, Tanja Porsnik is the president of the Visio Institute in Slovenia. I am very enjoying it to be the quota male in this panel, which is, I think, a very good thing. And we have two presentations, and then we are going to start with the roundtable discussion. I'd like to ask Tanja to start with her presentation. And I think you have slides, right? Here's the, can you pass it on?
Good morning. Thank you for having me to Republikon, as well as to ELF for supporting the event. This is the third time I'm here at one of your events, and it's as magnificent as it was in the past. So thank you for having me. And I am very much looking forward to the discussion today, because I think it's an important topic, as discussed before. The way I thought to put together the presentation, which hopefully it's going to be like 10 minutes, it's about giving you a background on Slovenia in terms of this discussion. So it's just giving you some framework. It will be divided into two sections. The first one will be just to speak about political parties that have been in the last decade or so Eurosceptical in Slovenia. And the second part will be in terms of the current government and how this is reflected in the current government. You might know we just voted in a new government a few months ago. There was an election. So I will be speaking a little bit about that. Let me start. So in the last decade, we have seen in Slovenia 3 political parties that didn't just hint to Euroscepticism, but they specifically stated that they would like to see Slovenia withdraw from not just the EU, but also NATO. So in their agenda, in their strategy is to pull out Slovenia of the EU. And these 3 are very different political parties, and I will be speaking about that. So I will have 1 slide per each of these 3 political parties. The first one is Socialist Party of Slovenia, the second is Slovenian National Party, and the left as the third one. The first one popped up on the political spectrum, and just for 2018 election, like they were formed a little bit earlier. In addition to them arguing for Slovenia to exit the EU, was also their idea of pan-Slavic, like let's join all all Slavic countries rather than be within the EU, have also stronger ties, not just with Russia, but also China, and they also, of course, argued for self-management. So basically, they argued for everything that Slovenia had kind of 30, 40, 50 years ago. So let's go back to the system that we had under Yugoslavia. They, of course, they have adulation for Josip Broz Tito. They participated at that election, 2018. As you can see from the slide, from the graphics here, they didn't get any seat in the parliament. They got only 1,551 votes. They didn't participate at the European election the year after, and also they didn't participate in the recent election in 2022 in Slovenia. So they kind of appeared and they disappeared, but I would say that they did appear not just like out of the blue, like in Slovenia. There is a fraction of the population that would like to see Slovenia go back in time, go back to Yugoslavia time. So it wasn't what I'm trying to say. This does reflect a certain specific part of the population, these kind of ideas, political ideas. The second political party, which is completely different from the first one, it's the Slovenian National Party. As you can see, it was formed already in 1994. It is driven by one person, the president, Zmago Jelinčić-Plemeniti. And it's interesting because their positions, like on policies and institutions, are kind of all over the place. Maybe because they have been on the political landscape for 30 years or so, or maybe because they have been calculating where to get the voters to kind of pass the threshold for the parliament, to get into the parliament. But as you can see, they have voiced, at least at some point, their opposition to the Muslims and to the church, but they advocate patriotism, they advocate for a stronger welfare state, but at the same time, they would like to see the reduction of VAT, the reduction of income tax. So it's interesting to see what they have advocated for. It's like, so a lot of times people, when they try to place them on the political spectrum, it's unclear whether they are on the extreme left or whether they are on the extreme right. But it is true that because they got into the parliament twice in the history, so basically they got in the parliament in 2008. So they got 5 seats out of 90, and they got also back into the parliament in 2018 with 4 seats. They are actually one of 2 only political parties that managed to get back into the parliament after they were they exited the parliament. And when they were in government, maybe it's just a coincidence because between 2008 and 2011, we had a right-wing, a center-right government, and then also here in their second term, for the second half, we again had a center-right government, and at both of these occasions, this party was a silent partner of this right-wing government. So basically, it voted with their policies, even though they were not in the government. So you can kind of say they lean more to the right. They are kind of, you can place them to the right spectrum of the political spectrum. They did participate in in 4 European Parliament elections. They didn't get not even one representative from those elections. They are a member of Alliance of European National Movements, so they are active on the EU scene. However, since they don't have any representatives now anymore in the parliament, their future is unknown. So they might disappear or they might just reappear in the future. And the third party, Eurosceptical party, it's the left in Slovenian Levica, which is completely, again, different from the first 2 that I spoke about. They were formed as under this name and under this constellation in 2014, but earlier than that, part of that, the left, the current left, was already active as a political party. So they've been kind of active since 2011. And their main objective is to, or at least it was, to get Slovenia out of the EU and also NATO. And at the same time, they are arguing for democratic and self-management socialism. So their agenda has been focusing on socialism, going back to the old times, and direct democracy. So these are kind of two main points that they've been stressing, and they have been very much on the extreme left of the political spectrum. Interesting, they have seen, so at the first elections when they appeared, they didn't get any members of the parliament in Slovenia. In 2004, they got 6 out of 90. And then their popularity was rising. So more and more Slovenians kind of thought, okay, they are representing our point of view, which kind of speaks a lot to the sentiments within the population. So in 2018, they got 9 out of 90 seats. So they were on a rise. So these kind of ideas of socialism, of self-management going back to the old times have been more and more popular. However, in 2022, so recently, just 2 months ago at the recent election, they got only 5, so the turnout for them dropped, and they got only 5 out of 90 seats. And I will get back to this a little bit later. So, and just to point that at the European Parliament elections, they participated at both of them, even though they are Eurosceptical. And they didn't get any of their representatives being elected into the EU Parliament. And they are a member of the European left. So this is an important point. And now I will go into that section about the current government. It was also written in a lot of international newspapers about this recent election in Slovenia. So the current constellation of the government, it's kind of unusual, and it's important from the topic that I'm discussing here, which is that the party that I was just talking about at the last slide, the left, is a coalition partner. So one of 3 coalition partners. So, oops, sorry. So this one, so this is the president, and then the left is one of 3 coalition partners, and this is very unusual. First, because the left, the Eurosceptical party, advocating for Slovenia to exit the EU. I mean, for them to be in a government, it's kind of contradictory to their position, because they are kind of foregoing their hardcore stance of Slovenia not having institutions that it does. But that happened in kind of in a very unique situation, because Slovenia elected this political party, Svoboda, which is translated into English freedom. And it's a new party, came out of kind of nowhere a few months ago. And it's kind of typical for Slovenian voters, it got 41 out of 90 seats. So it's a political party that is kind of unknown to everybody, where they stand on policy issues, on other issues. So we have now a government where this is a big unknown. This is extreme left, and this is Social Democrats is on the left side of the spectrum, with their president kind of leaning to the extreme left. So now we have a government that kind of, if you ask me, can go two ways. One is if these two parties are going to pull this one, the major one, into the left side, we could get an extreme, actually, in fact, extreme left government with these kind of points of views on going back to socialism and moving Slovenia out of not moving it out of the EU, but not being involved in the EU affairs and in national affairs, NATO, and so forth. Or if this party consolidates, like figures out that wants to be a liberal party, and then they actually kind of, how to say this, they actually act according to the weight of they got at the elections. So basically, if they become the leader in the coalition and they implement liberal public policies and keep Slovenia on the track that it is, we probably will see this extreme left political party exiting the government quite soon. So that could happen. So we don't really know what's going to happen with Slovenian government. And then finally, this ambiguity in terms of where Slovenian government will go, it's very much reflected in what happened in the last week. So when when Ukraine was attacked, we had a previous government, and the previous government stood very strongly behind Ukraine. The then Prime Minister Janez Janša expressed support for Ukraine publicly. And we supported them in any way that we were able to. But then with this new government, incoming government, the current government, it's unknown what they will do. And this, what you can see here on the left side, it's a public letter that was sent on June 10th, so just last Friday, and it was signed by 20 prominent Slovenians, and two former Slovenian presidents, and they argued that Slovenia should not support anymore Ukrainian efforts militarily or financially, just basically give listen to the Russian perspective the same way as it is listening to Ukrainian perspective, and therefore they argued we want peace, and therefore we should just be observant of the situation, not really get involved. But it's interesting that these voices are coming from the ex-communist, as for like the system of the previous system, the system that was very close to the Russian Soviet regime. But Slovenian society is not just that type of voices. So we had 3 days later, we had a different letter addressed to the Prime Minister and the Minister of Foreign Affairs that in Slovenia, we stand for international law, that we stand for liberal values, that Ukraine was attacked, that we should support them. So that was the letter signed by 30 prominent individuals. So there is a public debate now in Slovenia what Slovenia should do, and that reflects the question what Slovenian government will do. So if you ask me, we don't know where it will go, but this is a very good reflection of ambiguity and discussions about why we should support Ukraine. The issue of money was raised. As Miloš mentioned earlier, we are hearing more and more this kind of discussion. Let's not support Ukraine because this is costing us our not just sovereignty, but also money. So this is all from me from now, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tanya. It's very interesting to see actually how much opportunities do newcomers have in Slovenian politics. And Renata, please hold your presentation and please stick to the time frame. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm going to read you a brief reflection about Italian Euroscepticism, so political parties at the turning point of the Ukrainian war. As some of you may know, Mario Draghi is the successor of Giuseppe Conte, and the executive of the Italian Republic is now representative of a majority for governance, which is the Democratic Party, the League, Lega, which is the party headed by Matteo Salvini, Silvio Berlusconi, Force Italy, and Giuseppe Conte, Five Star Movement, whereas Giorgia Meloni, so Brothers of Italy, is the opposition. Well, if I am questioned about the Eurosceptical parties, I would respond that Lega, so the League, and Brothers of Italy are Eurosceptical current parties. The European Committees on Civil Liberties, LIBE, founded a month ago a study on the risk of penetration of institutions by far-right parties. In this document, Brothers of Italy and League are considered radical right. Why? Because they have a semi-unofficial relationship with Casa Pound, which is a radical movement, and New Force, so we can say neo-fascist movement. As someone of you may know, in our constitution, in Italian constitution, it is forbidden to constitute again fascist parties, so it's quite relevant. League and Brothers of Italy are actually at odds over relation to Russia and weapons. Salvini would be in favor of opening a dialogue with Russia and is very skeptical about sending arms for the continuation of Ukrainian resistance. League has settled on anti-European and anti-Atlanticist position. This is very important. But it was verbally because they voted the send of weapons, so it's just verbal. Meloni, on the other hand, seemed convinced of a closure with Russia and is in favor of helping Ukrainian resistance, which was settled in an iconic image in the attending of the US Republican Convention. Meloni went in the Republican US Convention. Such position, this is important, is related to the aftermath of the 24th February, so it's related to the war. But the Euroscepticism of Brothers of Italy and League is quite different because there is an overlap between Europeanism and Atlanticism. So now there is an overlap between the two. This, in a way, prevents us to understand how Euroscepticism is conceived by the two. Over the years, Euroscepticism in Italy has involved the center-right and the center-left, of course. Silvio Berlusconi, for example, in 2018, decided to go to the European People's Party to the cry of the necessity of Europe, which is something he's continuing repeating, the necessity of Europe. But Giorgia Meloni and Matteo Salvini are in a way the Eurosceptical because they are skeptical about giving sovereignty to Europe. Matteo Salvini is now member of Identity and Democracy Group, the group created in 2019, sorry, from the ashes of the old Europe of Nation and Freedom group. Giorgia Meloni instead leads the European Conservative and Reformist group since 2021. This is very important. The two, so both League and Brothers of Italy, oppose the ceding of state sovereignty, as I said. But I could say this is like an alibi for national tactics. So it is used, Euroscepticism, as a tactic for national interest, for national electoral and voting interest. This is a problem very common to all populist European parties, which often express in varying degrees elements of nationalism, nativism, various forms of racism and xenophobia, and preach violent, prevaricatory, and anti-democratic approaches. Euroscepticism in Italy has historically involved Communist Party, Socialist Party, Christian Democrat, and Nationalist, so it was transnational. But paradoxical as it may seem, the thinking of the predecessor of the two above-mentioned parties, so Lega and Brothers of Italy, was more logical, more organic, and consequential to history of Italian institutions. I would just speak about, give you a frame about the Lombard League, because at the beginning, League was Lombard League, so was a party related to the local, so to Lombard local idea of Europe, and it was conceived by a personality, Gianfranco Miglio, who was a lawyer, was someone who was conceiving a local idea of sovereign Europe, which wasn't the same as Lega. It was an idea of kind of confederation on a Swiss model, whereas Brother of Italy is related to the social movement, which was a neo-fascist movement, even if she denied this kind of relation, but it was a party born in the 40s, so it's during the Second World War, and it was a party which, of course, was nationalistic, but it has a concept of Europe related to a community of values. So both Lega and Brothers of Italy had an ancient idea of Europe, of course, not federalist, but not anti-sovereign. So it was quite different. I think it's important to give you the distinction between the past and the current problem, because now both Lega and Brothers of Italy are in a way similar to European Populist Party in the idea of sovereignty of people put before the rule of law, and nationalism corresponding to the transition from liberal technocracy to populist democracy. So if I am asked to describe with a sentence, I would say that there is a depolitization of politics in Italy. So they epitomize the depolitization, which was something which was described also by Pierpaolo Pasolini, who is a most famous Italian writer. And I would conclude just as to give a hope to liberal with Luigi Einaudi, which was a famous liberal Italian thinker. He said about sovereignty that the truth is the interdependence of free people, not their absolute independence. The isolated and sovereign state, because it is sufficient to itself, it's a fiction. There are no perfectly sovereign states, but only states that are servants one another, equal and independent, because they are aware that their lives, their perfection would be impossible if they were not ready to lend one another servitude. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Renata. These both introductions are very important and interesting because I think there's no need to further go into the details about the Hungarian and the Polish case, which belongs to the mainstream of populism and Euroscepticism. So I think most of us know these two cases well. So I think we can start with the roundtable discussion. And well, for us, the war, this new situation was kind of a game changer because we also changed somehow the topic of this event. And I'd like to ask, what do you think? What about the Eurosceptic movement and parties in Europe? The Russian invasion on the Ukraine, was it a game changer for the Eurosceptics? Does it mean more opportunity for them, or should they change their strategy because of this conflict? And Daria, maybe you can start.
Yeah, thank you very much. I didn't have a presentation like my colleague because Miłosz has done job for me and he introduced you with the situation in Poland. To your question, I think that this is the situation. I'm a sociologist. I'm not a futurologist, so that's why I can gather data post antem. So. We need to wait how this Euroscepticism will resolve after Russia invasion. But I think that some in Poland right now, and the government party, Law and Justice, of course, they have been always playing some kind of masquerade. Yes, they show the citizens that, of course, they are not Eurosceptical and they are against Putin regimes, but but sometimes they behave like they support or they miss for the old times and old times of communistics. They especially Kaczynski and their colleagues behave just like that. So in fact we don't know, but in informal way right now I cannot say that Russia invasion strength Euroscepticism in Polish leading party in Law and Justice, because we as a Polish citizens and because I don't want to say about government, we as a Polish citizen, we admitted a lot of Ukrainian refugees, and during this only almost 5 months, we admit over 2 million new citizens. So we have over 36 million inhabitants in Poland, and now we have over 41 million inhabitants due to refugees from Ukraine. And this is something what I need to say, because when the war started, with the crisis, humanitarian crisis, we can say, in Poland erupt, there was no government, there was no state, there was only citizens, people who came and who support these people who fled, and still many, because Ukrainians people assimilate very easily because of the common culture, language. It's not a problem. And they find jobs. They want to. Most of them. They are women, yes, and children, and they find jobs, and really they are great input for Polish economy, but government doesn't help. And what is about Euroscepticism? Because European Union Commission said that they give money, yes, as is all of the money. And probably government will somehow give help through money, and and if European Union doesn't give money for support Ukrainian people, then this Eurosceptic can erupt, if this money will be not enough. But for this time, we don't have problem with Ukrainian people because they find job, they have their own apartments, and it's quite good. But I think that there will be some problems with because our government doesn't have money to spend for help of Ukrainians. So again, they will need money from European Union. So now they need to act. Government needs to act that they are not Eurosceptical, yes, to receive money for migrants. But I'm not sure whether this money will come to really for the help of migrants, because as I told you, migrants help themselves, yes, with the help of the people. So it looks something like that in the crisis with Europe. But of course, we need to remember about one thing, that I don't know whether a small party in Poland, which is Eurosceptic or is for Putin, I don't know whether within 2 or 3 months some kind of nationalists, of course, that they will not will not be stronger. Yes, I don't know this at the moment. As I told you, this is now coming back to the main issue of Poland and European Union. It's money. It's a main connection right now, and maybe I will tell something like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrea.
Thank you very much. So I think most of you know that the most important Eurosceptic force in Hungary is the government party Fidesz, led by the Prime Minister Viktor Orban. So since the Prime Minister came to power in 2010, we saw that the Prime Minister always found a reason to criticize the European Union, and always found a reason to fight with Brussels, as they call it. I won't go into too much detail, but for the government, it's essential to have an enemy, have an opponent, and be in the position where they can say that they can defend Hungarians, they can defend the country against such enemies as the European Union, as George Soros, as the migration crisis, and so on. But one of those main enemies has been the European Union for over 10 years now, and as I said, they always found a reason to fight. Some of those most recent reasons was I know that it was the same in Poland, the rule of law mechanism, which was a huge debate in Hungary, and of course the government strictly opposed those suggestions and threatened the EU to veto the whole budget if the rule of law mechanism is accepted. So there was a huge debate around that. But before the 2022 general elections, just held in April, one of the, well, I wouldn't say most important campaign topic, but for sure an important campaign topic for the government party was this anti-LGBTQ referendum, which was held at the same day as the general elections, and it also had a European side, because the government claimed that the European Union wants to force their values on Hungary, wants to force Hungary to accept same-sex marriage and to accept the LGBTQ propaganda and so on. So it was also not only about how us Hungarians want to live and what do we want in Hungary, but also about the European Union enforcing values on Hungary, and this is something that we hear very often from this governing party. So of course, after Russia invaded Ukraine, it changed a bit, and the whole campaign after that was not about those issues, LGBTQ issues or other issues in Hungary, but the war became very important, and during the first few days of the war, we saw that the government party struggled a bit on how to approach this whole situation, of course, because of Orban's friendship with Putin, but also how to approach the whole situation was very tricky. But after that, they came up something very similar to what you mentioned, Tanya, that Hungary wants to stay out of this whole situation. Hungary wants peace. So, you know, they made pro-Ukrainian, you know, sentences. So we heard that we would like to help Ukrainian refugees. We don't agree with the aggression. Also, we heard, you know, some narratives that are very similar to what Russia is saying, that Ukraine is to blame for the war, and they shouldn't have, you know, opened up so much to the West and so on. So it was a bit mixed. But the main message that we heard from the Prime Minister and from leaders of the governing party was that Hungary wants to stay out of this situation, and Hungary and the opposition will drag the country to the war. So in order to stay out of the war and in order to protect Hungarians, you know, people should vote for Fidesz because we will stay out of this whole mess. The other important aspect of how the government approached the situation was, of course, protecting Hungarians financially. As you might know, like many other European countries, Hungary is also very dependent on Russia when it comes to energy. And one of the main focus of the Hungarian government was to ensure that those energy supplies continue to come to Hungary. There was a huge debate on these last package accepted by the European Union, and of course Hungary was the one to, you know, to tweak that package a little bit and to ensure that gas flows still flows to Hungary. So it was very important. So I think you know, it changed in a bit because there are two main aspects right now: this financial aspect of the sanctions and of the European Union, but also to stay out of the war. So yeah, we will go into further details after.
Thank you very much. Renata, you already mentioned this topic somehow in your introduction, but we are still interested in how...
because I didn't have the time to complete the reasonment. I think that for Italy, but maybe for all European, we have to separate public opinion and political parties, because of course many political parties are in a way obliged. In Italy, for example, they are obliged to accept the sending of arms, to accept the idea of Ukrainian resistance. But public opinion is different. For example, there was an interesting Eurobarometer survey, according to which 60% of Italians are afraid of a third world war. So the overlap that I mentioned about Europe and America, United States, it's very important, because people in Italy had the impression to be, in a way, a servant of American rules. This is important to discuss about that. I think this is one of the ways to overcome the common Euroscepticism, because, for example, there are many debates about common army. This was something which was being forgotten for many years. This is very important. I know it's difficult to do it, but this is a way to overcome this idea of overlap between America and Europe.
Thank you, Tanya.
So as a first note would be that Slovenia is not as economically dependent on Russia, including energy, as Hungary or a couple of other countries in Eastern Europe. So that puts things into a perspective, as well as we don't have as many asylum seekers from Ukraine as some of these countries. But similar to Poland, which you discussed, in Slovenia also the people accepted these asylum seekers, and the government until now has not really offered that much of a support, even institutionally, which is hopefully going to change going forward. In terms of how the political parties reacted after the war, which is very interesting, because if we analyze the answer to your question in relation to my presentation is, I would say there are three aspects and three different different voices that appeared. At the beginning, there were two, and now there are three. The first two was the Slovenian National Party emphasized the national aspect and national interest. Why should we support Ukraine if this is not benefiting us, like more like cost-benefit analysis in terms of like just money? Like, why should we do this? The left that is now in the government, they stressed the importance of not intervening militarily, so not supporting Ukraine militarily, because they are advocating for Slovenia to leave NATO and to leave the EU. So that is in line with their political stance. So they didn't diverge from that as well. And then the third aspect, which came apparent only last week, is this aspect of ex-communists. So it's the people that I would say were part of the previous system, were still part of Slovenian system after our independence, but obviously they have not ties or closeness to Russian people, but I would say to the Kremlin regime, to the regime, and that friendship that they feel with the regime resulted in the letter that I spoke earlier, which is in support of kind of, again, arguing for peace, saying, oh, we are for peace, and for that reason, we should forget the international liberal order and the national institutions, the international institutions. We should just kind of put these two parties on the same level and reach peace. Like one of them is not an aggressor and the other one is being attacked. So it's interesting how they come forward with this message of we are for peace, and therefore we consider these two parties as equals in this process. So what I would like to say, so basically nothing has changed. It's just that for this last group, it took a little bit for them to come out. They didn't say anything after the aggression started. But now it is obvious that these voices exist in Slovenian society.
Thank you very much, Tanya. It's interesting to see that in these countries that pragmatism somehow serves the interests of Russia in this matter. And then I want to turn to the topic Milos raised about the money, if it's always about the money. And Ivan Krastev said in the podcast that the European Union should stop to behave like an economic union, but rather as a political union, which is, I think it's interesting and important. First, I would ask if you agree with that. How is it possible at all? And secondly, somehow pragmatism is maybe helps to hold the whole European Union together, because if it's about policies, money, and not really about values, then maybe it's possible to hold the whole Union together. But somehow this kind of radical pragmatism, so to say, it can actually lead to a kind of opportunistic behavior as well. So a union of values, what do you think, Daria?
Well, that's a very important question, Daniel. I think that in case of Poland, as my colleague said, and also Miłosz said, that it's about money, and I need to focus a little bit on money as a cement, what makes us together with European Union, and this money became a core value of European Union integration, well, with Poland with European Union integration. Money is very important, but this is a very fragile value. Yeah, it's not, even you should ask whether it's a value or not. And I think that that Polish people are not skeptical. They're even not Europhobic. We are just a spoiled child of European Union. Spoiled child. We received from the very beginning, before 2004, when we joined European Union, we were told by left party, then by center party, a civic platform, and then by law and justice, that European Union is about money. all the time we have heard that before access, there's a very important, what kind of language politicians, teachers, I don't know, all people use in order to educate about European Union. This is still, we're stuck with the pre-accession language. Yeah? We are in the European Union for how many? Almost 20 years. Yes, 18 years. We maturate. Yes? And still we use pre-accession language. You will receive money. I receive money. You also receive money. You also receive money. Excuse me, German people, you don't receive money because you give us this money. Yeah? So, and if you don't give us this money, we don't like you. And this is what our government right now say. And from the very beginning, as a researcher, I studied, it was a few years ago, I studied curricula, school curricula. What they told about, what is written in the school curricula about the European Union, yes? And European Union is, you know, is a fact with flag, is a fact with atom, the children must know, flag, atom, and so on. And then, you know, it was written in the curriculum. Please list the advantages of being in the European Union. Yes, list advantages of being in the European Union, and please notice which buildings in your area was supported by European Union. It was something like that. I'm sorry, this is I just translate now. Yes, so the young, about, I don't know, 10 years old child need to find a building near his house and said, oh, it's from European Union. Yes, and that's what they were told. And then I don't know, before our meeting, I asked my students. It was about 65 people. And they were born in 2001 and in 2002. So when we joined so they lived their whole life as in European Union. And I asked them, what European Union means for you? And what was the most the answer? Do you know what means European Union for them? On the first, money. And very often, even some students wrote me money. Some students wrote me it's a piggy box, you know. And second thing, which was important, and which is always has been used by pre-accession language, is travel. I can travel without passport. Great, yeah. And third thing, and this is quite new, and this is something what shocked me, but perhaps this is the result of Ukrainian birth. It was security. That European Union gives us security. So for me, it was a little bit, I don't know, maybe they mistake European Union with NATO, but I don't know, I need to ask, but it's something about security. And really, even in the textbooks which I exam, in curricula which I exam, I haven't found security. I haven't found any values. I haven't found that Poland, as a member of European Union, is also responsible. That all citizens of Poland are also responsible for the community, yes, as a European Union. No values. So that's why I think that if money disappears, or if money will be not enough, or if a border will be closed, this pandemic, yeah. So I think that then we decide, well, we don't need European Union. We have this building, we have these roads, yes, because we don't have values, you know, that from the education, yes, from the beginning, yes, European Union is money from all of the parties that have been ruling in Poland, yes? You know, money. It's very, very sad. Okay, I want to be more optimistic, but yes, I'm a happy person, exactly, but, you know, it's sad it's about money.
I think it's already a good thing if we evaluate the situation and then we know where to act. Andrea, please.
Well, in some ways, the Hungarian situation is similar to the Polish case, but I think there are some major differences as well. So what you said about how important is to know in Poland that which building was supported by the European Union and so on, I don't see it as important in Hungary. So I don't see, politicians of Fidesz really advertising how much the European Union supported this or that project, and even because of this fighting of this fight with the European Union, many people criticize the government exactly because of accepting money from the European Union, but then not abiding any regulation or fighting with their values and so on. And even the government even said that don't think that we are taking advantage of the European Union. We sacrifice a lot to be in the European Union. So they even debate this basic fact that we get a lot of money from the European Union, and we do get it, but they try to somehow make it a bit less important. Of course, right now with the war and with these sanctions, as I mentioned before, the government is saying that their first priority is to defend the financial interests and economic interest of Hungary. That's why they don't support a lot of European initiatives, and especially, as I said, when it comes to energy. So I think it's very obvious that the Hungarian government sees the European Union as a fund, as something that from which Hungary gets money. But when it comes to values, when it comes to common action, they are less supportive of the union.
Thank you very much. Andrea, Renata, what do you think about the union of values?
Yeah, I think for Italy it's different because Italy is a core country of Europe, so it's an unease position because at one side, of course, Euroscepticism, it's growing. There is also a party called Italexit, which has like less than 1%. So, but it's important that it is there. So it's dangerous. But I want to say that I think that Euroscepticism is a kind of reactive Euroscepticism. So it's something in public opinion that comes at times, in times of crisis. So we are going to be at the center of another crisis because of the Ukrainian war. So it's important to be ready. To be ready to give answer to that. And I think that the most important answer is politics. There is a loss of politics because the problem of Europe is that it's not felt as something who overcome the reality of people. This is, so the defense, okay, the defense is one of the things, a common defense. The Democratic Party in Italy tried to do like a memorandum for Europe, like in a federalist way. It could be a way, it could be not, but we have to discuss about that. We cannot avoid to discuss about that.
Thank you, Tanya.
So just from a point of a researcher of institutions, common values are like a foundation or a glue for an endurance of these institutions, political institutions, in a liberal democracy. So without common values, the institutions will collapse eventually. We have to get a grip of that, because if we don't, and we kind of stop stressing or not start to stress the importance of the common values, and even if it's just a few of them that can keep everything together, we will see the EU dissolve. So that's the first point. And the second point is, I think it came naturally that the political union came after the common market in the EU. So I don't see the political unions being sustainable without a common market. So this idea of we are going to have a political union for what? People will say even more than, like now they see that they are able to travel, that you know, the goods may go from one country to another without unnecessary restrictions and delays and services and everything. So the flow. So if you take this away from the people, which to a great extent what happened during the pandemic, for other reasons, of course, then people will say, why do we have this? Why do we have this union? And if it's just a political union, they will even more say, oh, it's just for the politicians to, you know, meet and get something for themselves, but there is nothing for us. So I don't see a prospect of having a political union within the EU states without the economic union. And in terms of Slovenians thinking about common values, I think we are more close to these two countries. Like, we don't perceive EU as a piggyback to such an extent that you guys do. Maybe because our government was not so successful at drawing the EU funds. They are kind of not skilled in that. So maybe that's the reason. So we do see the EU a little bit more multifacetedly, what it brings us, and also maybe because we are not anymore like the relationship between not payers and we are already on the other side. So it's like maybe that's also the reason why Slovenians don't see EU as just a, you know, helicopter that is going to drop money. So maybe that's the reason.
Thank you very much. When it comes to European values, then we saw that Russia in previous years also tried to undermine European values like tolerance or rule of law or international solidarity or you know, aiming to solve conflicts with the diplomatic means. So and also we saw from Eurosceptic parties and movements that they put into question values like enlightenment, which is, I think, we saw some Fidesz politicians who had some negative comments about, you know, enlightenment, what is not actually a Western European value, if not the enlightenment. But so my question would be, when we consider this new Russia-promoted Euroscepticism, what could be the liberal answers? What could be or what should be the strategy, counter-argument, counter-frames of liberal parties, think tanks, or even individuals? Daria? Sorry, just after this question, we are going to open the floor, so there could be also questions from the audience. Thank you.
It's for me personally, it's a very tough question, because I feel more as a researcher than a politician. But I think that well, there's a problem with freedom, you know, especially in freedom. And maybe I will answer on the other way. Maybe I don't answer in positive way what we should do, but maybe what we shouldn't do. Okay, so I think that we live in the culture of fear, you know, that we, especially by media, probably we are frightened about many things, and in Poland very often since beginning we were frightened also about the European Union enlargement, despite the fact of money. And I think that we shouldn't frighten with Euroscepticism. I mean that we shouldn't frighten that if we, it happens sometimes in Poland, that if we do poll exit, yes, then what happened? We lose money, yeah? So this is not a good answer, you know, this is not a good, strategy to frighten people that if something has happened, you know, that our narratives will revolve around fears, you know, that if we leave European Union, then it, I don't know, we will all die, or we will, because money run off, something like that. No, I think that we shouldn't frighten people, but still, I think that the most important thing for a liberal party, but unfortunately in Poland we don't have liberal party. We have, but we don't have in, this is not popular. But I think that all things should start from the education. What I have told you, that if we only show show the benefits without values, without showing the broader, the big picture of European Union. I think that as Tanya told, that without shared and common values, all institutions will collapse. And that's why what we need to protect, or maybe even not protect, but to develop, is to find the value, the common value. I think that's the human rights, values, and freedom. Yeah, just the freedom. Thank you.
Thank you, Daria. Andrea?
So I think to think about it, it's important to go back to the point of how we perceive the European Union, what roles do we associate with the European Union. And as we discussed, one of those important roles is money. But other things I think which got a bit forgotten is peace. Which was a very important value when the European Union was founded. But for our generation, peace is given. A lot of European values, democratic values, are a given. So we don't think about how life would be without the European Union and so on, and this safety that it gives us. So in some ways, I think the war can highlight those advantages as well, and as Daria mentioned, the security aspect of the European Union became much more important after the war. And also, I think for liberal parties and pro-European parties, it's very important to point to Russia and to really understand what's happening in Russia is not only the war, but what's happening in Russia, that you can't call the war, that they are arresting journalists, activists, and so on. So those human rights violations that are happening in Russia, let's hope that it cannot happen in the European Union. Of course, Hungary is a bad example in that, because we saw that many anti-democratic things can happen in a European country as well as in Poland, of course. But maybe. So I'm not saying that Hungary should hope that the European Union will solve our internal problems and hope that that they will protect everything, and we see that the government can make a lot of anti-democratic decisions despite being a member state of the European Union. But it gives some security when it comes to democracy, when it comes to rule of law, and so on. And I think it's very important to see it, and the war can highlight those issues as well.
Thank you, Renata.
Well, I think that one of the most important accuse made by Russia to Europe is secularization. So the idea that Europe doesn't have anymore the idea of Christianity, which was at the core of the European Union construction in a value way. So I think that in a way we should fight against demagogy, because of course this messianic idea, it's also made up with demagogy, but also fill with values the answer. So I think that even liberal, even laicism could be the defense of person. So the idea of the single person, which has to be defended in terms of values, in terms of ideals, and so on. So we lost the sentiment of the common people, which is, I think, the detachment from public opinion. This is our way, I think, to try to fill our gap, because we had a gap, and we should admit, and then after admitting, we can try to solve it.
Thank you, Tanya.
I think we have to do two things. First and foremost, to stress the importance of not just common values, but then also institutions that that define the liberal democracy. There is a lot of talk about rule of law, but there is not so much talk about limited government institutions like checks and balances, separation of powers. So that is something that we need to strengthen on local level, on national level, on EU level, and also emphasize why, which was mentioned before, why do we have constitutional democracy? Because we would like to have a better protection of human rights and also have other goals achieved. So I think people need to be reminded of that. Why do we have institutions? It's not just for nothing. Then we also have to do the second part, which is we have to support them, not just with our votes, but also the people in these institutions need to act in order to support the institutions, which is we have to call upon the politicians, the people in these institutions, to actually exercise their powers to maintain, to even strengthen these institutions in terms of the EU, because it's evolving. So I think that that's the role that I would like to see, that we would go and we would go forward. So basically strengthening constitutionalism in the EU. If we do that, the EU has a future, if you ask me.
Thank you very much. And now the floor is open. Please raise your hands if you have questions.
Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Raphael Schroeder. I work at the Belgian Embassy. Thank you very much for organizing this very interesting event. My question relates to this new alliance of the right of European political parties that had been growing these last years with events in Warsaw and others, where we saw political parties, Eurosceptic political parties, discussing if they should form a new alliance in the European Parliament. I wanted to ask you, how do you see the impact of the Ukraine crisis on this coalition that would bring together political parties that are very Russophobic and others that are very Russophile? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We can have another two questions. I guess there's...
Thank you. My name is Andrei Gana from the Embassy of Romania. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. So the first part of my question was already asked by Raphael, but I was wondering, in a more general sense, do you think that Euroscepticism has the potential to constitute a unifying factor from a political point of view? Do you see it itself as being able to constitute a value, let's say? Thank you very much.
And there, back there, Stefan.
Yeah, my name is Stefan Gostecki. I'm working at the Technical University of Chemnitz. These are my students there. And we have a lot of challenges in Europe right now. Of course, we have to find a common European answer to the war. We have to defend enlightenment, very important, because if you look at this bizarre discourse on liberalism led by Law and Justice in Poland or Fidesz in Hungary. And the third point, this would be my question to you, we have to find answers to this illiberal challenge. And now Ursula von der Leyen formulated these milestones. What is your answer? Should we pay the money from the recovery fund or not? I would say not, but I'm interested in your answer.
So, yeah, Daria, if you want to start.
Because I can agree, because this was of course not. No, you know, there's something very interesting about this case and about Euroscepticism. Because a few months ago, one of the professors from the one of the Warsaw University, he published his results, and he has showed that there is a slightly increase in Euroscepticism, but not in Euroscepticism like we talked about, that European Union is something bad. This Euroscepticism was among people just like me and just like us, who were afraid that European Union will not do anything with the breaking rule of laws in Hungary and Poland. So this is a quite new Euroscepticism, that we are afraid that European Union will neglect breaking of the law. So when we think about Euroscepticism or Europhobia, we usually have a face of nationalists, or the face of socialism in Slovenia, or the face of radical rights, yes, far right. But here we have a quite new people who are pro-European Union, are against law and justice. Suddenly they see that European Union, they have seen that European Union neglected this issue, yes? So that's why I think that, and of course I think that they should stop money, because as I told you, it's all about money, yeah? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Daria. Andrea?
Well, I will try to answer the first question, and then give the floor to my colleagues, because I feel like it's very important from a Hungarian point of view, because Viktor Orban, I think, for some time desperately wanted to have a big role in founding a new right-wing alliance in Europe, and have a leading role in that process, especially after leaving or being kicked out from the European People's Party. But so far we've seen that it didn't work for Orban. I think, as you mentioned, right now there is a huge difference between Eurosceptic populist parties when it comes to their relationship with Russia, whether they are very anti-Russian, whether they are pro-Russia or neutral. So there is a lot of divide between those parties, and I think in the past that was exactly what we saw when it came to migration. That, for example, of course, Fidesz is a very anti-migration party. And their approach to migration and what we have to do with migration is very different, for example, to Salvini's approach. So there are some very important practical conflicts when it comes to those parties, and I think there is the same right now. So even though we see that they have a similar approach to Europe, and they both criticize Europe for internal political reason and so on, I don't see them agreeing on a lot of European policy questions right now.
Thank you, Andrea. Renata?
Well, as for Euroscepticism and right-wing, in a way, I think that it depends from us. It depends from how we are capable of giving a reliable answer, which should be, as European institution, we should be reliable, because the problem is that people fear about what they don't feel comfortable with the institution. It's not only about knowledge of Europe, it's also about giving answers to needs. So it's about us, and it's also about the European crisis, because we are going to have another economic crisis. So it depends on how we would be capable of overcoming this crisis. Of course, I think that geopolitics is changing, because even if Italy is dependent from gas, it is going to change. We are going to have other cooperation. So geopolitics is changing. So we will have to see in the future.
Thank you, Tanya.
I will just answer the question from the gentleman from Romania, which kind of ties to what my colleague was already talking about, which is I wouldn't call it Euroscepticism of the people that are disappointed, and goes back to what I was saying before, that some EU institutions failed the EU citizens in terms of not acting when they were supposed to protect common values and the institutions themselves. So that is, I think, a very important point, and goes to the question, which is, I don't think the criticism, because in that case was a criticism, or Euroscepticism, have it's a value. I think it's a just point of view, that's something they disapprove. And as I discussed earlier, there are various angles why people oppose the European Union or critique it. I don't think that's a value that when you oppose it, because you don't have, as I discussed, maybe they have a value that they would like to see socialism, they would like to see communism, they would like to see a dissolution of all international alliances. So that's what their value is. So I don't think they can, I mean, if there was only one and if it was significant in the population, maybe then we can talk about a transition to a different system, but I don't see that. But I think we should stress that all European states are founded and still based on liberal values, like from Enlightenment era. And even if politicians like to spin it this way or that way, we are liberal democracies. Maybe they don't function perfectly. They never function perfectly. But the question is whether we are going to support these institutions of a liberal democracy or constitutional democracy or not. So this is up to us to demand it from the politicians and then politicians to give it back to us.
Thank you very much, Tanya. Thank you very much, Tanya, Renata, Andrea, and Daria for this valuable insight. For me, at least, the most important takeaway is how to connect the material benefits of the European Union with European values. I have just some project ideas in my head already. So we are, unfortunately, we are out of time, but we are going to have a coffee break of 10 minutes. So we are going to continue at 11:55. So you still have some time to discuss some issues with the panelists, and then we are going to continue with our Hungarian panel. Thank you very much.